list of all the upcoming concerts this month. Next week is Amy Wirtz on the piano. If you are a musician locally, you definitely know Amy. She founded and is a member of New Music Chicago. She works with Access Contemporary Music. This is going to be a very exciting piano concert, and Amy always puts a lot of thought into her pieces. So I hope that you can join us both in person and on the live stream at home. If you'd like to learn more about today's artists, you can open up your program. It's an interactive presentation. I know, it's a lot of fun. And you can find Paula's website right there underneath her bio. Please do visit her website. She's got information about upcoming concerts. She and Diana both have information about CDs you can purchase and different ways that you can follow them through their newsletters. If you'd like to take photos and videos, please feel free, tag everybody on social media, but do remain seated while you take those photos and videos, just so we don't interfere with anybody's sight lines. Take a moment, make sure those cell phones are silenced one more time, and put your hands together for Paula and Diana. Thank you so much.
music. I'm Paula Gudmundson. I teach flute at the University of Minnesota Duluth and had the opportunity to come here and join you for this first concert of the season. I want to tell you a little bit about some of the pieces we'll be playing. When I proposed this concert, I wanted it to be music featuring women composers. And so that first piece you heard by Anna Bonn, she referred to herself as Anna Bonn of Venice. She was from a family of musicians. She studied at the very famous orphanage in Venice that is connected to Vivaldi. She published these works when she was in service to Frederick of Brandenburg, and so she dedicated these pieces to him and actually composed them when she was 16 years old. So the next piece I'm going to play is actually a piece that has a connection to Chicago. So I started to come to Chicago in May of this year to research a composer from that has this connection to Chicago, Edith Boroff. She was a musicologist and composer. She composed about 60 commissioned works, many of them for organ because that was her instrument. She was born in New York City, attended Oberlin. At Oberlin, she sort of had this experience where they told her, nope, you can't be a composer. And so she decided to leave after her first year and came and studied in Chicago at the American Conservatory of Music in 1946. So I became aware of this composer because I did a quick Google search into what was available at the Newberry Library. And it turned out that all her writings, all her compositions were available at the the Newberry Library. And I became interested in her because she taught for a couple of years at a university called Milwaukee Downer College, which consolidated with Lawrence University, which is actually where I did my undergrad. And so I started down this path to learn more about this composer and what her life was like and why she left all her things to the Newberry Library. She really wanted people to kind of read her writings. She has an autobiography that she has available there. So I've kind of been learning more about her and her life, what took her to Lawrence, what her experience was. And then she ended up retiring from teaching in 1992. She taught at SUNY Binghamton. So, because I knew I was coming to Chicago, I decided that I would program her piece for solo flute, which is titled Divertimento. It's actually 5 movements, which I'll play continuously. And they just each have a little bit of a different mood and a different character. So, enjoy. and they are very, very, very different. So I'll tell you about each of them separately. So this first piece by Valerie Coleman is titled Legends. It's 4 movements. The first movement is a reference to the lotus lily. The second movement refers to the god of Irish mythology. So you hear some Irish musical elements, dance elements. The third movement is related to Greek mythology and to the personification of the earth. And then the last movement, El Encierro, refers to the bull ring. And so it makes reference to the running of the bulls. So you'll hear kind of that quality in that movement. So this next piece is, again, like I said before, by the same composer, but it'll be a very different piece in terms of its reflective mood. So Amazonia, Valerie Coleman wrote it as part of a commissioning project. So a number of flutists from around the United States, around the world, we pooled our resources and asked her to write a piece for us. And then we had a year to sort of first write to perform it, and then first write to record it. And so Diana and I recorded it. And then now kind of lives in the repertoire. She wrote it as a commemorative poem to the Amazon. And it's intended to describe its natural beauty and what's being done to the Amazon. It takes you through like a day in the Amazon, basically. So it begins with sunrise, sounds of all the different animals in the Amazon. You'll hear frogs, you'll hear insects, you'll hear monkeys, and then you'll hear sort of a dance in the middle. Much of her music is inspired by jazz, gospel. You'll hear this dance that's inspired by African music. And then it takes us to a sunset. And then what she talks about or is referring to in the end is sort of the unfortunate destruction of this natural wonder of the Amazon. So this piece, if you compare it to the previous one, very different in terms of its character and its mood and some of the techniques that the flute does. I'll do at the beginning some flutter tonguing. You'll hear some of that to imitate sort of the frog sounds.